4 p.m. session, Friday afternoon. Cole Braun. Why do people really donate to your school? Called on. All right, I'm going to get started just because it's a little bit after 4, and last year I drew this session as well. I don't know, must be something about my speaking prowess, but hopefully you'll stay awake. Hopefully we get a chance to talk about why do people donate to your school? Is everybody's school connected to a school in some way? Or okay, so everybody's. I was hoping that because it may not exactly fit the same model for a church, although I think there are a lot of similarities. Real quick, as I said in my last session, this is not what I would consider wouldn't consider it anything because my clicker doesn't work. That's because my helper turned it off on me. There we go. See if that was cool. Maybe I'm going to be running it manually. Nope, got it. So this is going to be a little bit shorter session. It's obviously a really small group of people, so we can just chat about things. And well, it'll probably take less than an hour. But I would say this. There's nothing more important in schools right now than figuring out the funding model and donations. And I'm going to spend a little time before we go into why do people donate to your school, talking about some things you may be experts at already, but I find it, as I talk to people around the country, I find that there are some things that we're missing that are not being acknowledged. And so I want to bring that up as well. So real quick, I don't know if you got this. I'll put it back up at the end. But my cell phone number and my email are on there. You can call me, email me anytime if you have any questions. This presentation in PDF form is on the app already, so you can download it. If you want a PowerPoint version to steal it, put your own name on it, I'll send you that as well. It's not that magical. So anyway, who am I? Just so you know real quick. So a redeemed, loved, unique child of God, married to my wife for 39 years. She's put up with me that long. I've got 3 kids, 3 daughter-in-laws, and 4 amazing grandkids. They're the best ones. Anybody else that has grandkids knows what I'm talking about. I've served in my current role since 2013. I'm the CEO of the Lutheran High School Association. So for the past 10 years I've done that. But before that I spent 25 years buying and selling businesses in the for-profit market in pretty much any market that you could think of. As I said earlier, Tom heard me say this, I was a consultant at a time where what that meant was, oh, you can't hold down a real life job, so you became a consultant. And maybe that was true, maybe not. So we serve 2,100 students, 4 brick and mortar high schools, 1 brick and mortar grade schools, 2 virtual campuses. We have about 290 employees. And then we're always looking to grow and to do more. And so a passion of mine, being from the business side, is how do we solve the financial model, the financial challenge of Lutheran education? I'll share a little bit more about our organization in a minute when I get into that. So first question. Love to hear an answer, and you don't have to write it down. You don't have to share it with a friend. But in your opinion, if you want to be bold and blurt it out, what do you think the financial objective of a non-for-profit organization, or in this case a school, would be? Well, how would you write it? Sustainability.
And maximization, the goal is to multiply to be able
to grow, to create more. Okay. Anybody else have one they want to throw in there? Enrollment. Okay. All pretty good answers. I mean, there's no wrong answer. So. Follow, okay. Here's what I think it is. And again, this is just my opinion. But here's what I think it is. I would argue that the objective is to generate as much net profit as humanly possible so that you can provide maximum resources back into the mission and vision of the organization that you serve. You need to be as incredibly profitable as you can. You have to make as much money as you possibly can, because what you're going to do with that is roll it right back into your students, right? Here's a follow-up question. Raise your hand if you have too much money available to your school and you don't know how to use it. Right? Typically not a problem. As a nonprofit organization, we put our money where our mission is, equipping student athletes to succeed on the playing field, in the classroom, and throughout their life. Non-for-profit does not mean no profit. Anybody heard that mission statement? This tiny little non-for-profit is called the NCAA. They had net income of over $1 billion last year. It's a non-for-profit. They're going to use all the resources, that $1 billion. I'm going to apply for the job. Their CEO made $3.9 million last year. But if I've got higher expectations than that, I'll go to this one. Until 2015, the NFL was non-for-profit as well. They had annual net income of $10 billion a year, and there was the commissioner's salary was about $10 million of that. So my point is this: we've got to stop thinking about, well, what can we do without? What can we do without? How do we get by? And we've got to start thinking differently, and that's what this discussion is all about. I'm just going to give you a little bit of this history so you maybe understand where I'm coming from a little bit. So these are our 5 current schools: Milwaukee Lutheran, Lake Country, Martin Luther, Mount Calvary, and Trinity Lutheran Classical School, which we are just launching right now. We believe firmly that you have to have margin if you want a ministry. There is no ministry without margin. The more substantial the margin, the more you can do with your ministry. You've got to think that way. And so for us, our first school was founded in 1903, 119 years ago, Milwaukee Lutheran. All 4, I won't go into the details, all of our schools are incredibly different with the community we serve, the culture we serve, the academic readiness. This is in the inner city of Milwaukee. This is in the richest county in the state of Wisconsin. This is on the south side and has a blended demographics of economic readiness and academic readiness. That's a inner city grade school, and that's a classical education school. So we serve everything. When I started in 2013, our enrollment had dropped to its lowest point ever since we had these 3 schools at the time, and it was down to 1,000 students. We had just under $30 million worth of debt. We were running at a clip of a $750,000 a year loss. And we had no vision, no brand. We were sunk. We had no place to go. And so we needed to change everything. Through God's graces, through a lot of incredibly hard work, through paying attention. We do have one thing that's going for us. We have a 119-year history, so we have a lot of alumni. Can't bump into anybody without saying, oh, I was a Red Knight. I graduated from Milwaukee Lutheran back in blah, 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 blah. Right? So we have good people, but we've mistreated them, lost touch with them, ignored them, met with them 6 times and asked them for money 6 times, right? Instead of building a relationship with them. We did everything we could to just try to survive because we were just trying to survive. Luckily and thankfully, with a lot of incredible hard work and a lot of people, Andy's one of them right here, our head of development. We sit today with 2,160 students, 5 schools. We have not had operating loss in 10 years. We've had operating surplus. We've put almost $7 million into our foundation. We've got $3 million worth of emergency reserves. We have done over $25 million in capital projects, and our debt is down to about $11 million. God is good, and God is much bigger and stronger than we think. We just have to recognize it, and we need to go for it. So we believe this firmly. It will always be a revenue problem for Lutheran education. It's always going to be a revenue problem. Can you point to one of your teachers that spent way too much on pencils or paper and put your budget into a horrible deficit, right? That's not what it is. It's always a revenue problem. We have to solve this to be sustainable, right, for the long term. And I think the key to it is this. The overwhelming majority of our Lutheran schools, I had to put that in because 2 of my good friends, Steve Book from Faith Lutheran and Mary Scott from Orange Lutheran, they don't need the extra dollars. They can make it just on tuition dollars. But that is not the case for literally everybody else. They need substantial non-educational revenue to supplement the tuition revenue that we generate from enrollment. But what changed, right? School happened 50 years ago. School's still happening today. So what changed? And I want to share this with you before we get into what I've learned about why people donate, because I think it's really important and people skip it. This is something that you can use as you talk to people about school. So fundamentally, Lutheran education has changed its funding model over the past 40 years. On average, right, yours will vary differently. On average, in 1983, 30% of the school funding came from church support. That includes high schools and all of that. So you may still be getting that. But if you were getting that now, I bet at one point it was 80%, right? 37% of our funding came from churches. 49% came from tuition, and then 14% came from donated dollars. Today, that looks incredibly different. 1.8% of our funding on average comes from churches, so 2%. 68% now comes from education revenue, and 30% comes from donated dollars. So what does that do? First of all, puts incredible stress on our donor base and the people who want to support us. Hey, can you give me $10,000? Sure. I'll be back next week to ask you for $11,000. And then next year, we're going to use all that. I'm going to come back and say, look, we've had inflation of 10% and this and that. So if it could be $15,000 next year and then $20,000 the year after, because we can't raise tuition. Why can't we raise tuition? Because we've already raised it, and we're eliminating all of the families that want to come to a Lutheran school. People that can come to a Lutheran school now are people with incredibly high means, or if you happen to have a voucher program, they can come on a voucher. And I'll tell you, we have 1,500 kids in our school on voucher. It's not the savior, because they give us 60% of the cost to educate a student. It costs us $12,000 to educate a student. We get $9,000. Which means we have to raise $4 million a year to get to zero at my organization. Yeah?
Are you including anything that has like funding from the state or local level?
So we don't. So that would be included in your. We don't care who pays the tuition. If there's a kid coming and grandpa's going to write the check, or the state's going to write the check, or whatever. If you have, and it's unique. Again, your situation. Like in Canada, the government funds an incredible percentage, I think 80% of the cost of education for private schools. So this model doesn't work there. If your state is different or you have local funding, this is just the average of what Lutheran schools look like. The point, more than anything, is that we're putting incredible stress on our families, which isn't allowing them to come. And we're putting incredible stress on our alumni to support what used to be supported naturally. And so that makes sense? Anybody else have questions on that or thoughts on that? So,
have you guys seen that? I mean, is that the same thing in your guys' churches?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I should be fair. I better say this. There's no pastors in the room, or if there are, at least you're connected to a school. I should be fair. It's not like the churches went, well, we don't want to support education anymore. They don't have the money to support, right? They're struggling to make their ministry go, and that whole model has changed. I mean, I don't have this slide up there, but one of the reasons that looks the way it looks is we've closed 11% of our Lutheran schools in the last 7 years and lost 24% of our students. So the money isn't there, right? They're going someplace else. So I think the other big thing before we jump into why people fund schools, one other thing is people don't see this. Like, this is a secret to most people. And the reason it's a secret is because they said, well, wait, 40 years ago, put your school name in there. Martin Luther High School was running school. It's running school today. It's fine, right? I equate it to this. Have a really good friend who's in the auto repair business. You and I laughed about it when we heard it for the first time, and it was so good I used it. When your car breaks down, right, and they come to pick it up, and they go there, and they're like, yeah, my car broke down, and then you get the call. Hey, found out what's wrong with your car. We can fix it. It's going to be $187. Okay, please fix it. I need it to go to work tomorrow morning. You hang up. They call later. Your car's ready. And you, I don't want to say happily, but you write them a check because now your car's working, right? Because you knew there was a problem. When you go to your donors and say, we can't do this, could you help us? They know there's a problem. They're going to write a check. 3 weeks later, that same auto guy calls you and says, hey, I was looking over your car maintenance schedule. You really need to replace your transmission fluid. You're like, okay, I'm listening. Well, we looked, it's 10,000 miles past due. You got 50,000 miles on your car. You really need to replace your transmission fluid. What runs through our mind immediately? I'll do that later. My transmission's working just fine. School is still in session. You seem to be doing a great job educating kids with the dollars you have. Why do I need to invest in it now? So the model has shifted and nobody's paying attention. Nobody's talking about this. And so you can talk about it. One of the cool things is if you have inspired donors, you talk about this and they'll start to get it. They're like, okay, maybe I do need to think about this a different way. So I just want to share that before we jump into the title of the presentation, which is why do people really give money to your school? These are all, this is not all of them, but these are the revenue sources that we know of: tuitions, fees, grants, endowments, planned giving, auctions, church support, written appeals, etc. We're just going to focus on donor gifts. We're just going to focus, this presentation is just to focus on one segment. I think you need to do all of these incredibly well. You need to do amazing work with appeals and events and everything else, but I think the one that has the biggest potential is donated gifts. So this is just a disclaimer. What I'm delivering you today, I'm in the middle, well, almost at the end. It feels like the end. I'm in my doctoral work at Concordia University, Wisconsin on leadership, innovation, and continuous improvement in education. My dissertation question is this: what are the factors and influences that impact how often and how much a donor gives to a Lutheran school? So that's why this was developed. And the disclaimer is this: I'm still in the middle of that, so I can't say definitively. I've done my literature review. I've done my methods. I'm in the middle of my research. I truncated and started analyzing, even though I know I'm probably not supposed to yet, to figure out, okay, what am I seeing? What trends do I have? So this is built on research that I did at our Lutheran high schools, but I think it applies. Yes, question?
I'm also in the leaking program. I'm just curious if you're doing qualitative or quantitative.
It's qualitative study. Yep. How far in are you? What cohort number are you?
I transferred from Portland, so I'm
Okay.
in between. But
Okay. I was back in cohort 6, so I have one class left, and then I just have to finish this work. It sounds like it's almost done, but I know it's not. So, anyway, just as a disclaimer, that's what this is built on. Okay, so I'd love your feedback as well. So here's the factors that I considered. There would be other ones, but here's the 5 factors. What influence or impact does the clarity and the quality of your mission and your vision statement have on a donor? What was the personal experiences that the donor or the donor's family had with your school? And those experiences are academic, social, extracurriculars, personal relationships, so you can even break that down more, right? What was their personal experience? What's the level of trust and confidence that the donor has in the leadership of the school? What are the interest and the commitment of the greater good, including their spiritual life or their spiritual level, their faith life, have on their donations for Lutheran schools? And then I wanted to pick one that's just literally not connected to their spiritual life. Like, talk to me about the age cycle. I could have picked gender too, or whatever it is, but I just picked age because I didn't want to do 20 of these. So those are the 5, okay? So I'm going to go in reverse order. The one that, anybody want to guess? The one that has the least impact or that we can do the least about? Anybody want to guess? It's a small group. Age. But there is an opportunity. Andy and I were talking about this at lunch today. The frequency of giving, this is what I found, and again, I think you can take some, whether it's exactly accurate or not. The frequency of giving goes from often to less as the donor ages. As donor ages. They don't give as much, as often. They just don't, right? the amount of donations goes from smaller to greater as the donor's age goes up. That makes perfect sense, right? When they're trying to accumulate wealth and they're trying to pay the monthly bills and they just got out of, in our case, high school, they're just accumulating debt for 4 years. They're not going to give us any money as they go to college. So it takes a while, and then it comes around. The opportunity for us as schools is to cater and understand the giving cycle of the donor and build relationships as they move through the cycle. One of the things that I found is during this cycle, it says first gift, second year gift, multi-year gifts, multi-year activity, major gifts, and then ultimate giving. As they move through the cycle, or they move from annual giving into, oh, you have a project, I love tennis, you're going to resurface the tennis courts, maybe I'll help you. If you lose contact with them at any point for the cycle, you've lost the major opportunity for them to stay invested in your school as a high school. One of the things I should say is, if you look at any research at the higher ed level, throw it away as trying to compare it to a high school. It's completely different. The reason people give to higher ed is completely different than the reason they give here. And I'll share a little bit about that later on. So it makes sense. What can we do as they get wealth acquisition? Like we do some things like if they graduate in the year 2023, we're going to encourage and offer every alumni to give $23 a year to celebrate their graduation year. And we'll bring them back for parties and do whatever we can. And then maybe after 10 years, maybe that would go to $230 because they graduated in 2023. And then we just rebuild that relationship knowing that the majority of this giving is going to be later on. But that's about the only influence that we have is to stay connected. And boy, is that a long-term gain. I'm 62. The people that are graduating right now, I mean, we're setting them up hopefully for the next person to do. I'm not going to be around when they're going to be a significant contributor. You can resurrect a donor that's been ignored or goes off that donor cycle. It's really hard. Andy's done a really good job for us. We've found a bunch of people that, we were 119 years old, right? Our schools are, and so there's some people that have been lost. But we didn't say, hi, nice to meet you again. Do you want to give us money? It's been years of trying to redevelop that relationship and figure that out, right? Any questions or thoughts on that? No? Makes sense, right? Just because we can't control the age doesn't mean we shouldn't pay attention to how we can maximize that donor cycle. The next one, you probably don't remember them. I'll go back once. Oops. The next one, anybody want to guess the next one? Kind of a fun game I didn't know I was going to get to play. Clarity and quality.
Oh, you least or more?
Least. The next least. I don't know how to say that. B? Somebody say B?
I said D.
D? Yeah, it's D. So what's interesting is their spiritual connectivity. The donor is significantly more likely to support a Lutheran school if they consider themselves to have a strong and active faith life. That makes sense, right? Okay, I love what you're doing. I'm a Christian. Maybe I don't have a specific relationship with you, but you gave me a compelling story. I'll help. However, donor is not more likely to support a Lutheran school because they have a general feeling of supporting the greater good for all. What I'm finding, and I need to do more work in this area, but it's flooded, right? You can't turn on the TV without help the dog, help the this, help the whatever. And so if they have an interest in greater good, if they don't have a personal connection with you or they don't have a reason, you're really not going to convince them to do anything differently. So there's really not much we can do in this area, but I do believe that we can provide a place where students and their families can grow spiritually and grow closer to the Lord. And so that can help. We should focus our area there, right? Which means if there's somebody that like, wow, that family is loaded and they give a ton of money to the YMCA and they just did a donation to Make-A-Wish Foundation, you should go get them. Probably not going to, you should go talk to them, but it's not going to move their needle just because they have an interest in the greater good. Okay? All right. Back to this one again. Third one. And then I won't make you do this guessing game for all of it. Or let me say it this way. What do you think the top two are? B and C. Okay, you guys are A students. You get extra recess after this is over. Correct. So the next one is the clarity and the quality of the mission. And it's a little tricky because as I got into that, I was trying to differentiate the clarity and the quality of the mission and the trust and confidence in the leadership. And Tom was in my session for a while earlier, and it was all about brand mission and vision. And really what I'm finding is it ends up coming down to if you have a clear and quality mission and vision statement and you execute them, then that builds confidence and trust in the leadership, and that's what they feel more powerful for. I use this as an example, though. I love this because I've seen many schools like this, right? Here's the mission statement of a school that tells them exactly what they do. Our Lutheran school is to help families in providing a Christ-centered education of high academic qualities so that students may be prepared to take an active, vital place in the home, in the church, and the state, and their future vocations by applying Christian principles to a biblical manner. It's exactly what they do. But it's not a clear and it's not a quality mission statement. I'd much rather be able to say, we exist to equip students to become strong Christian dream makers and world changers. Our students are going to change the world through a Christian lens. Want to be part of that? Much more so than the other one. So there is value in this, but it ends up coming out in the role of trust and confidence with your leadership. So real quick, this was my presentation from my previous slide. This is the biggest factor. Here's what we found. It's not shocking, but it gives you an opportunity to pay attention to specific pieces. Your brand, your mission, your vision, and your core values, why you exist, why you do what you do, and how you execute that every day is what ends up building confidence in your leadership team and gets people to donate to your school. It's one of the most powerful things that you can do, right? If they know what you're about, if you can share with them, this is why we're different, and then you execute that every day, people will be inspired to be part of that. And it's really, really hard work. I'll give you a really quick example. Our second core value is relationships, and this is what is written. Our commitment to others is marked by care, dignity, humility, integrity, and the application of grace as we build meaningful, lifelong connections with one another. It explains what the behavior should look like if I want to build a meaningful relationship with you, which I do because relationships matter, right? Here's the test. This is not our school. I wish I had players like that at our school. This is Kansas University. But assume it's your school. You're about to go win the state championship. Your player goes right to the rim. 2 seconds left. You're down by 1. Scores the basket. Gets fouled. Clearly got fouled on the way. You are about to hoist the ball and win the state championship. And then the official goes like this. Offensive foul. Now in that moment, your coach, how is he going to build a meaningful, lifelong relationship and exhibit these behaviors of integrity, grace, humility to that official? What's that?
You have to lose with grace.
You do, but you just lost the state championship. There's 6,000 people in there. How many times do we do this well? Not nearly enough, right? And we can't draw the fans back in and say, I'm a sinner, I'm a Christian man, I apologize to him, I told him I didn't mean to scream at him, even though I know he got paid by the other coach, whatever. It doesn't work that way. My point is, the core values, building trust and confidence is about knowing what you stand for, about developing a plan, and then staying with it, right? Whether it's your core values, it's your mission statement, you can't bend on that. They have to know what you stand for. And so, this is what it is. This is the second most powerful thing that we have. We underestimate all the time the power if somebody looks you in the eye and says, I trust you. I believe in where you're going. You've not steered me wrong before. When things didn't go well, you were the first one to pick up the phone and say, hey, I just want to let you know, this did not go well, and here's what we're trying to do about it to fix it. Like that level of confidence and trust can have a huge factor. Donors are 5 times more likely to give to a school if they believe in the trust and the confidence. So just ask them on a scale, like how significant is that? Some of it like, I would give 0 if I don't, and I would give a ton if I do have confidence. And the amount that they give also goes up with the amount of trust and confidence they have in you as the leader. Not the school, but how do they trust you? And because that's what they end up putting their money into, right? They end up putting their money into you as the leader of the school. They don't get to see your math class on a Tuesday, see if it's, in alignment with what you're doing. They just see you. So I think there's a significant opportunity for us to shift our focus and say, I have to own this. I have to own what our school feels like to our donors. I can't pass it off. It's one of the lessons that I keep pointing at Andy. I really appreciate you being in this meeting, because when I started 10 years ago and then Andy joined us, we had kind of this understanding. I'll tell the story, but you're the advancement guy. You have to go get the dollars and then just kind of bring me in and sprinkle me around at the end. It worked okay, right? We're not doing that anymore, though, are we? Yeah. We have a $70 million comprehensive campaign going on right now, so we kicked it up a few notches. But I need to own it. I need to be there, the leader of your organization, whoever's the most senior person. If you want to really change the structure of your donor and get them to give, you need to spend your time in this area. Even if you have somebody that works in your advancement department that sets all of those and does all those relationships, you can't be a run in, run out. You've got to build this confidence and trust. It's the second most important thing that I've found for donors to give and give consistently to your school. I think we underestimate it. We just underestimate the power of that. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Yeah, Tom?
The question that's asked of me is, all right, you're in your 60s.
Yep.
Are you going to see the project through to its completion?
Yep. So I'm 62. I guess I'm in my 60s also.
Because they trust my leadership.
Correct.
But they don't know the next leader.
Correct. So not part of this presentation, but I'm going to share with you anyway exactly what we did. So I have a high level of anxiety. I'm a pretty active guy for 62. I'm not going anywhere. If I didn't do this, I would be doing this anywhere, someplace else. So I'm not going anywhere for a while. And most leaders, it's the same way. 60-ish doesn't mean that you're like, oh, I'm about to be done. However, the thing that gives me the most anxiety is this. I don't want to see a change or a blip in our vision or where we're going. So the succession plan, having a consistent and known, you can't tell them everything, because I'm not going to be like, well, Andy's the next CEO, because I can't give him the job until he becomes, there's a lot to go on. But you can build your team, and you can talk in confidence with donors. Like we have a specific succession plan. We bring incredible people around us that you've seen, right? You've seen this. We brought this guy and this girl in. We've done this. And so I will guarantee you that the vision and where we're going in this project does not depend on me personally. We will have all of this in place. So when I do step down, because I'm going to at some point, the next person has been in our midst. It's not just a random search. And that's hard. So we've done that right now. We have an individual who is coming back to our schools, who everybody is not said in public and not on paper anywhere, but everybody knows that that's my heir apparent, that that's the next person that's going to be. And it's going to be 7 to 10 years, hopefully, unless they kick me out. But so there's going to be a long ramp up. So it's a great question. And I think what you have to do is you have to back up one and go, okay, let me think of it from their perspective. What is it going to look like? If I'm gone, is it going to fail? And then that's scary too, because it should never be about you and your relationships. It should be about you sharing this school. And a lot of language like, this school has been in existence for 27 years, or for us 119 years. My job is to make sure that the next leader and the next leader are aligned with what we're trying to accomplish for the next 120 years.
It's all grand to say.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Think of senior pastors who are just loved and
yep.
you guys-
But then they go someplace else. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. Yes.
One of the reasons for doing overlapping of lead pastors is that very reason.
Yep.
Because we've watched the disaster, we've all experienced it. You know, your charisma is carrying things, you leave and the congregation.
Correct.
crashes. Same thing can happen.
Correct. It absolutely can happen with the school.
You got to have a transition.
And you have to have a transition plan. And even all of that, sometimes the grander plan does not help with the work. That's where you go back to, what does your school stand for? What's its brand, mission, vision, and core values, and how is it being delivered every day? Can stand when there's this transition and the turmoil of trying to get this new thing happening. But it is a limiter for sure. I mean, it's a limiter at the high school and the grade school level way more than it is at the university level, because the leaders, they didn't build a relationship with that leader. They built a relationship with Michigan University, right? That's where their alliance was, or whatever it is. So it's a really good question. It's not an easy one to answer, but I think we as leaders should set up a system and talk to our donors freely about this is where it's going. And we do the same thing with our board. I don't know how your boards are structured, but we went to 4 2-year terms, 8 years you can serve on the board, because I have on my board my current board chairman, my second board chairman, and my third board chairman. So the consistency and direction from a board and governance standpoint is never a surprise either. And so you just continue to work that out. So succession planning, transition, consistency in that is super important. Great question. Make sense? So the number one, obviously, but I do want to talk about this a little bit, is the personal experience that they had. Either they had, or their kids had, or their grandkids had. And at the high school level, it's different than at the collegiate level. And this is a really interesting finding. So the personal experience that they have has more influence on their decision to support your school than all of the other ones that I looked at. And if I put that on a multiple choice test, I think you probably would have got that right. But what does that really mean? What it really means is we should be paying full attention to this area when those kids and those families are in our school. We shouldn't be like, oh, well, they're out 10 years now, we should start talking to them again. Was that a good student? Did they play golf, or were they in the band? I can't remember. Like, you need to invest in them, and you have to have intentional actions. This is the whole presentation, right? You have to have intentional actions when they are there that says, I had an unbelievable experience at the school. I want to pour back into it. And here's the challenge. We will always be behind the colleges, and the grade schools will always be behind the high schools in the donor pecking order, with some asterisks, okay? I would say this. If you look, the research that I did, that's part of my literature review, at the collegiate level, do you know what the number one factor of these experiences? So there's personal relationships, there's extracurriculars, there's social experiences, and there's academics. At the collegiate level, what experience is the number one factor in a donor giving back to their school? That's what I would have thought too. Nope.
Personal relationship.
Nope.
Academic.
You know why? I went to Marquette University, and they made me a doctor. And so my whole career, my family livelihood, is built in the fact, in their mind, I'm not saying that's what happened. In their mind, that's what they think. That's why, and Andy said it, he's like, because I just shared this with him again a couple hours ago. That's why he said, now it makes a lot of sense. We have conservative Christian people who still give a tremendous amount of money to Harvard, and they say right along like, yeah, I'm still giving a tremendous amount of money to them, but they bother me like crazy because of their political views and what they're involved in and what they stand for, but yet they got their law degree from Harvard, and so they give their money to Harvard because that is what defined them in their career. Guess what? Guess what's the worst one on the list for high schools? Nobody cares. Oh, you gave me the foundation to show up on time and to work hard and to respect people when I was in high school. I should give you a bunch of money. That's not what had happened. And crazy enough, even though they're incredibly social and incredibly focused on themselves, the next one that doesn't matter is their social interactions. Just doesn't matter. It's the top two. And this one, although I need to ask more questions about it, the extracurricular itself doesn't matter. It's the coach that invested in them, or the the choir director that invested in them when they participated. It's a personal relationship, and I ask the questions in such a way where it's a personal relationship with a teacher. Not teachers, not staff. It's a teacher. So if you took your entire list of students at your school right now and put it out in front of your faculty and says, Adam Arndt, who has a personal relationship with Adam? Who can tell me more about how they're doing? Who knows do they have a cat? What do they do who knows that person and has invested in that? Adam Baker, who knows Adam? If you went through every one of your students in school, would they have this? That's what the donors are built out of, that personal relationship. So I think where the huge opportunity is for us is to shift our thinking to put everything in place that says, how can I invest in this kid so that relationship is something that they will never, ever let go of? And they may never donate to you, but they are way more likely to invest in the school. You know, those of you that are coaches or have been around a while, you did it today with Mr. Barr, right? You were a classmate of his, not a student and teacher, but you reminisce about a time you had when you were in school together. There are people that come up to teachers all the time and go, I graduated 24 years ago. You were my English teacher. You made a huge impact on me. Thank you so much. Or do you remember me, right? That's the basis. This is all relationally driven. And it seems simple. It seems like we should just automatically do that, but we don't. We're busy teaching math and trying to get them to do all the millions of things we want them to do. So we ignore this a lot. I think this should be a cultural piece for everybody's school talking with their staff. Like, who owns this? We have to do this because that's where you're going to generate. And we've seen it. We've seen people that have said, this person incredibly impacted my life, and they've given way more money than we ever even thought they had. It's like, how did you do that? I didn't know that, you could have $500,000 when you were a painter or whatever it was. Like, it's amazing. This is it. This is really it. Yeah.
Just to clear, you were doing it. Is the high school the same as K through 8?
Yes.
Okay.
The only challenge is again, most K through 8, and again, I spent most time on the high schools because we had 4 high schools, only 1 grade school. The K to 8 model, so you got to get through the other. The K to 8 model, they will always talk about the teacher, right? That 3rd grade teacher was amazing. I hated my 2nd grade teacher. I loved my 3rd grade teacher when I was in grade school. That was in 1967, so I remember that, 55 years. So yes, it's probably even more so because you don't have the extracurriculars. This is all dictated by the parents, and as long as you pass and you can recognize your colors and your numbers, you're good to go to the next grade. All right? So yeah, it's even more so. And I don't know, I don't think that grade schools or K to 8 schools should settle for saying, well, we're going to get whatever's left over after the colleges and the high schools. But I don't have a good plan to get over that hurdle. It's still relationship driven. There's no doubt. Yes.
What we're running into is that on the West Coast, because people are fleeing to the Christian schools.
Yep.
And they want to have their students, by the time they get into junior high, in a school that will have a high school.
Yep.
Because and they'll move toward a school that can.
Yep. Yep. I mean, it's been our argument all along. We hear people, because we don't have any K to 12s, they're K to 8, and in our association it's K to 8, and then they got to pick one of our high schools. And we hear it all the time. People are like, yeah, they've had such a great Lutheran education through grade 8. We really feel they're ready, and they'll do a good job. They should experience the real world. They should go to a public high school. And I just like, please don't do that. Have you ever thought about the decision-making capabilities? Right. It was the decision-making capabilities of a 14-year-old. That's when they needed the most. And so you're right. With all the recent things that are happening, it's like, I got to do more of this. So anything you can align and connect yourself with, get through grade 12, I think is powerful. So just to finish real quick, I think all of us need to think about our schools differently and think about how do we create those experiences that are going to significantly impact and somebody's going to refer to 20 years from now and go, that was something that I'll never forget, right? those moments, create those moments, and invest in it through your people. Like you just have to acknowledge, name it, and go for it. You just have to come up. And so your school's going to look different. Like when you bring people in to do tours, is it or is it like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing ever? You know, is there, when you have introductions or new people or orientations, do you have music player? Do you have cheerleaders there? Do you have other students giving all the tours? Do you give them a swag bag when they sign up? Do you deliver to their grade school, if you're a high school, the next day, all their gear with their T-shirt and all this stuff to say, welcome to be a member of the Red Knight Nation. We're so excited in front of all their other students. Do we, like, you just got to create experience after experience after experience and then continue that in your daily work. I think it's really valuable. And all of that, again, back to my previous presentation, if you weren't able to get to it, if you look me up, that presentation is on the app as well. All of those experiences should come back to what makes you you, right? What are your core values? What makes you different? Why do you exist? And why should they care about why you exist? So if I know why I exist, and I'm going to pour all my time into create exceptional experiences, and ultimately everybody is going to have a personal relationship with a teacher that they're going to look back on, you have your best opportunity for them to invest in your school long term. That sounds really hard, and it sounds like a really long process, but you already have people that graduated from your schools, and they had some of this. So work with that alumni and just continue to build it over and over and over. It's not rocket science, but I do believe that it is changing if we name it and we intentionally focus on it, right? As somebody said, you'll do 30% better on anything you intentionally pay attention, anything you pay attention to. If you pay attention to what does this look like in our school, and how do we make sure they have trust and confidence in us as a leadership team, that we're consistent in our messaging, and that they have personal experiences with the kids and a teacher, golden. Questions, thoughts, comments, contradictions, anything else, any ideas, anything that's running through your brain?
I think our elementary schools do a terrible job of development. It's because of manpower. I mean, to have it, all right, our school's been in existence for 67 years. Our database of alumni is pretty non-existent.
Yeah. Yep. And high schools are one click ahead of you. I don't know how much time and resources we've spent since you got with us, Andy, in the last 8 years or 7 years, whatever it is. 6 years? Seems like forever. But, it's the same thing, and it's not easy work. I mean, we're even to the point, so think about this job. Take all our old yearbooks, open up the page one and go, Steve Smith was in swimming, track, tennis, the choir, and was whatever. And then go into our database and enter him in and enter all the filters of the things that he participated in, and then go to the next person on page one. We've had 3 years of that. We're through like 50 years of yearbooks right now where we've added that to our database. So I don't think it's limited to grade schools, but I think maybe there's the biggest opportunity in grade schools because they're maybe ignored it more than others.
What you do is you try to help to get the people who we're right at 3 generations now who have gone through Redeemer, and help them to tell the story.
Yep. That's the other. There's so much on this that we could talk about, right? You don't have enough development directors to tell a story to raise enough money. You actually don't even have enough teachers and administrators. You need raving fans that'll tell that story for you. Yes.
I have a question. I didn't really see it in here, but I'm curious of what influence past faculty and admin have on the donations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So it's in the had or have. So it's went the wrong way. It's in this personal relationship when they had that relationship. So we have people that went through 30 years ago that said, Mrs. Wallace was my English teacher and she made a huge impact. That's why I'm giving. So it's the same, whether they're current or former.
Well, that was like an answered my question, but I guess I didn't ask it straight enough. How would you get Ms. Wallace to donate? Is that realistic or what?
It is, but typically, we have a few that did that, but typically your donor base does not come out of your workforce. Like they don't have the means and they've donated their entire life to it. They're usually not significant financial contributors, but, some are. Like, you have a wife or a husband whose wife is a financial planner at whatever, and they have means, but it's not specifically tied. Andy, go ahead real quick.
It's proportional to what you have, but my parents were Lutheran teachers, my grandparents were Lutheran teachers, so my sisters are, I washed out after one semester, so had to go a different route. I'm continually blown away at the generosity of our teaching staff who do these long days and then coach all night and everything, and still raise their battle at the dinner auction. They give sacrificially, and it isn't just that. We've established a estate planning coaching program where a lot of our teachers, as a benefit of being in the organization, is we help them get their estate plans done, and I have a fund set up to also pay for most of their legal costs. So it's in lieu of 3% raises, which we can't always afford, here's something, a benefit.
Right.
I am amazed at almost all of them leave charity in their estate. Almost all of them leave our school in their estate plans. And it may not be much, and some of them it actually is quite a bit. But their generosity proportionally, you know this, they're super dedicated to what they do, but they also give. It is one of the things that continues to amaze me and keep me going is the generosity and the commitment to the end of our teachers and our staff.
Yep. Yeah, it's a really good point. We get locked in on the dollars. Like, is a $50,000 giver that could give $500,000? Does that feel different than somebody who could give 100 and they gave 105? Right? I mean, that's sacrificially giving and being involved is not about the number of zeros. You need them all. That's what we're talking about now. Like we need everybody to be involved and that's why you can't miss those. You got to engage in those kids all the time. Anything?
Yeah, I know this isn't really what you were kind of getting into, but what's, as far as like how schools facilitate the giving, as far as, we mentioned galas versus private individual talks, and do you have any comments on what seems to work better, or is it all based on the type of age of giver?
So, for detail, connect with Andy right after. He has an opinion as well. You'd talk to him. But I would tell you this. All of those things I listed are important. You need to do appeal letters on a consistent basis. You need to have galas and outings, whether they're a golf outing or a spaghetti dinner or something to celebrate. You need to have you have to have a planned giving program. If you're not, that would be the first thing you do, because it's not going to benefit you. Well, it might you, because you're a pretty young guy, I'm guessing, but it's all of the planned gifts that we're putting in place are going to be realized way after we're done. So you got to do all of those things, including grants, if there's people that do that, but the people get excited because all the grants, that's going to change my world. Well, guess what? Grants are dictated based on a relationship with the people who run those foundations. It's the same business that you have with your major donors. And so the number one factor for generating revenue that you're going to use for the needs you have to have is personal one-on-one relationships with major donors. It's just a relationship with a major donor, and whatever major means. I should say major's not the right word. We call them major donors, but I would call a consistent giver, a consistent supporter. And you got to figure out what that looks like, right? So we write thank you letters to anybody. Andy writes personal thank you letters to anybody that gives over X amount of dollars. If it's over X amount of that, he writes one, I write one. If I have a personal relationship. So there's all of these strategies in play, but the overwhelming majority comes from one-on-one donor relationships. Would you agree, Andy?
I completely agree. And it's, like you have the collegiate model in admission and advancement, and it's really been adopted successfully by high schools now that you have an admission program and advancement. And eventually, I think it'll have to get down to the grade school and at the church level. And a big part of that is, most high schools didn't have an endowment or a foundation.
Right.
Now. and I think most grade schools need to have one. It's super easy to start one. But it sends the message that we're making long-term plans to be around here
Right.
for a long time. And we're a good example. We started our foundation 10 years ago. That's
Yep.
where we met.
Yep.
And we had nothing. Actually started it with a negative balance. And we've had as much as $7 million in there in 10 years, which you could say is a lot or a little, I don't know. But for the first 110 years, we didn't have
We
anything.
didn't have it, zero.
And if we hadn't started it, we would still have nothing.
Yeah.
And so you just got to get some of these things started. I lead a seminar up to a day and a half for people, like with what you said, it's for small shops where you're not doing anything. But I'm the principal, I also teach half-day 8th grade, I'm the coach, and I'm cleaning the schools on the weekend, and we have a budget deficit of $400,000, and they told me I got to raise it. Like, what do I do? And so when you have, I'm doing this at the ALSS session, it's if you have no money and no time and no idea what to do, like I'll come to this session, there are things you can do, and you really, concentrate on 10 or 20 people a year and that's it, that you can really move the needle. And that's what we kind of did when I first started there, and now we've
Yep.
started branching and we've seen it grow into everything else and become more all-encompassing and to the point where we're ready for a campaign finally.
Yep. So if you want to get to Andy, email me and I'll give you his number if he's more compelling than my speech, because it's about raising the money, right? But seriously, I believe fully that every Lutheran school has to grow and thrive. My dream is that high-quality Lutheran education once again becomes available to anybody that wants it. That's why we're in a $70 million campaign, because if we could put that in our foundation, anybody that walks off the street and says, I want to come to your school, we could say, okay, you're part of our family, let's figure out the rest. Right now, we can't do that. We don't have the funds and the resources to be able to do that. So I want Lutheran schools, as we all do, to thrive and grow around the country. I dream of the day, and I don't know if I'm going to see it or not, but when you get, I don't know if you ever get the Lutheran school ministry chart every year that shows the number of students and the number of schools. I'm dreaming of the day that this year's number is one more student than last year's. Just one more. I just don't want it to be declining. Like I said, we've lost 11% of our schools and 24% of our students in 7 years at the LCMS, and we got to change it. I don't want to be the political math where the rate with which we're losing is going down less, so we're calling that we're winning. Like that's not good. So anything else I can answer for any of you? I know it's late, and I appreciate that. Yes?
Yeah, I really appreciate the information you provided. My school is about 145 years old.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
they're pretty much starting from the ground level when it comes to fundraising.
Yep.
So you showed those charts at the beginning.
Yep.
We are about 75% funded by the congregation, 70%, maybe
Yeah.
25% by tuition, the other 5% by donations.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of work to do.
Yep.
to make it sustainable and to allow for potential growth.
Yeah. Well, just think, if you have that much funding from your congregations and you could activate your donor base and your 145 years of alumni, activate them in addition, you'd be building buildings and doing things you never dreamed you could do. So I think it goes back to it. So you haven't been able to get it started before, and there's a lot of reasons and whatever, but if you just start it, you're going to be, a few years down the road, you'll be like, wow, I can't believe we're here.
We're in the process right now.
Sure.
Getting that going, and so, the ideas that you presented, I think, will be very helpful. to
Good.
us.
So-
Let me give you an example. Do you have an endowment or a foundation for your school?
We just created one a couple of years ago. It's quite small right now, but
Good.
we
But you have
started
it.
with that about 3 years ago.
So at 145 years, I'm almost guaranteed that you had at least 20 funerals last year. Okay, how many estate gifts did you get from those 20 members that died?
Very few, probably.
Yeah, and so at a minimum, make this, communicate the awareness that you have this and this is an option and this will sustain our school and everything. And we track this at the high school. There are 8 to 10 people who die every year that leave us in their estate.
Yep.
And there are people that gave to us for over 40 years. And so like these, and that's, I've always thought at a church, like, they've been members not only for 40 years, but for 3 generations, or 145 years or whatever, probably 7 or whatever it is. Like, they love your church, and they will give to it if someone just shows them how, and makes them aware of, you know,